Welcome back, everyone, to our study of Matthew chapter 13. This quick overview study, something you could look at before you start reading the chapter to point out some of the more important facts and kind of brain twisters that confuse people. Now, as I guide you through this is more or less a continuation of chapter 12. And after Jesus is arguing with the Pharisees, he starts explaining to the people in a very simple, easy to understand way. A lot of people think parables, he did this so people can understand it, but actually, it's not that people cannot understand it, it's that most people won't understand it. He's not trying to get them to understand it. He's not trying to invoke an emotional response like a lot of people do when they go to church. They just go there to get high on Jesus, high on the stories, and they use the story to rev people up, to invoke these emotional responses. Here, Jesus is not doing that. He's never done that, in my opinion. From what I'm reading, what he's doing is he's saying, here's how it is. And he's doing so in things, in situations like here, a farmer sowing seeds, so that they can understand. And people can actually make the decision. Are they going to follow through or are they not? And that's why Jesus later on gives these examples of some seed falling among thorns. So the people listening will be divided up in groups based on the outcome of what they think of what Christ is saying. Now, for us, the reader, we're kind of let in on what is basically a secret at this point. At this point, in verse 11, to you has been granted to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been granted. For whoever has, to him more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. And then they give some Old Testament references. Now, again, as you go through chapter 13, a very intensive chapter for readers. But it's fine. Just read what you can, and when you become a little overwhelmed, just stop for a while and pick it up later. But what he's talking about in chapter 18 is an explanation. So you, the reader, are let in on the secret, and you're able to understand what's happening when Jesus tells these parables to groups. And then he has the kingdom of heaven. And he tries to describe as best as he can what the kingdom of heaven is, what it's all about, what is coming. You know, again, earlier in a previous video, Jesus talked about the age that exists now at the time he was there and the age to come. And the age is interchangeable, not a word for word, but interchangeable with the new heavens, new earth that is coming. And Jesus is that representative of the heavens and earth, manually and physically bringing that in, which is the main point of his ministry. Here we have some more information in verse 30. Allow both to grow together until the harvest. And in the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, first gather up the tares and bind them in bundles and burn them up. But gather the wheat into my barn. So what Jesus is saying here is he's giving an idea that the wheat and the tares, in this analogy, in this verse here, that they grow together but don't bother them now. But later on, they will be separated. And then he goes on to describe in more detail the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven, all throughout. Leaven. He gives from multiple angles so people can understand what this kingdom of heaven is and how it grows, like a mustard seed, like leaven. He also gives example the leaven of the Pharisees in other chapters. But here he's using it as an example of how it spreads and how it throughout the what we call dough. And here he gives another reference in verse 39. And the harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. The Son of Man will send forth his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all stumbling blocks and those who commit lawlessness. We have even more heaven and earth, or the kingdom of heaven, examples here in 44, 45. And he's just trying to hammer home the idea of the spiritualness between the two. You have a physical earth, and then you have a physical earth that you're in, but the spiritual aspect to it. And then he talks about here in 49, so will be at the end of the age, the angels will come forth, take out the wicked among the righteous. Again, over and over, he's explaining how it works and what's about to happen at the end of the age. I think the most important part is just to read and absorb what's being said here. You may not understand it right away, and that's okay. As long as you understand the words that are being said to you. What Christ is doing is, again, simply just explaining as best as they can understand, in ways they can understand, what the kingdom of heaven is like. Because it's not like anything they've ever known. And it certainly isn't, because people to this day still don't believe that this kingdom is here now, even though it was there at that time, and it was said to be soon coming. So keep that in mind as you go through your life, what is being said, because these examples that are harder for us to understand 2,000 years removed from the time they're being said. But the story and the overall message is the same, that there is an invisible kingdom here now that people can't see, but they can't see it because they're not a part of it. They're thinking something much different. But if you read clearly, it is not saying that. It is saying that is here, and it was been here 2,000 years ago.